Because I'm interested in people. I'm interested in the fact that we're all the same. We hurt the same. We read mostly the same things. We have this extraordinary thing that we're all unique, and we are unique, but we have so much more in common, and that's why cultural mediation is attractive to me. I love cross-cultural mediation. My education came from training with Bob Proctor, training with Dr. Joe Dispenza, training with Sandy Gallagher, training with Anthony Robbins. I just loved it. I loved the freedom that they said, you can be what you want to be, you can do it.
Amos Madra.
Christel Sandy Cowdrey, author of the book How to Fire Your Husband in Easy Steps. A warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you off air before we started, and I was looking forward to this conversation. Now, your husband is known for cricket. He comes from a cricket pedigree background. They've won so much, and I thought this is going to be an interesting conversation. We can speak about cricket, but then
we can talk all day about that.
But then I noticed,
even as a Swede, I learned quite a lot.
Yes, but then there was something remarkable, something unexpected, something warm, something unique, which was your depth and understanding for oneself, personal development, the higher self. And it was a pleasant surprise. So before we get into the book, I just want to know a bit more about that side of you. Talk to us about the Christel that perhaps the world doesn't know so much. The person, the writer, who has this depth of spiritual understanding.
Well, thank you for inviting me today. And when you read out the title, you forgot the little bit underneath, which is key, which is that a miraculous divorce. So in 2014, I went to a personal development team in Canada and worked with the wonderful, inspirational man, Bob Proctor. I'd done quite a lot of following him for about 10, 15 years before that. But, you have children and you're busy and you don't really have time to yourself to do those things necessarily when people are small. The managing director comes quite down the list. And in my book, I always say, my mother used to say, don't curtail your freedom until you're really sure you want to get married, because there's a completely different ball game and you're now going to be the MD of proceedings. So, which of course you are. And Chris and I are dear friends. I should say that straight away. And I was on this particular training and someone said, well, where's your husband? Have you got a husband? And I said, yes, he was here for 25 years, a quarter of a century, but he had to be fired for his misdemeanors. And I did it as a sort of smile and a joke. I didn't really know what to say. It came out and everyone laughed and it stopped and deflected all the gossip. And of course, it is a very well-known family, a very loved family that I married into. And he married into one too, a Swedish one with also lots of history. And so I think that was probably a good thing that I didn't know very much about cricket, because I think it's croquet, I think, in Sweden. And but I'd always been interested. I'm quite a researcher by nature, quite analytical, I've always written. I also studied broadcasting at the National Broadcasting School and went to screen school, screenplay writing. I wanted to understand people. I wanted to have I've always, maybe it's because I'm a middle child, the oldest gets all the sort of stress and the pressure, and then the second one comes along and the parents go, oh phew, we know how to do that. We can chill out now. And so there's much more freedom. I think people always bemoan that they're middle, but I think I had so much freedom to express myself. And my mother was a musician, a singer, a coloratura, and I'm a mezzo soprano, and our sons are high tenors. And so our twin boys got the sport, because one of them followed the family line as a professional cricketer. The other one could have done, most likely, but chose music. And they both sing and they both play sport together. So, and they played rackets together and all sorts of things. So I think the music was the calm in me that I was able to give to the boys who grew up with a strong name, on their shoulders. And I don't know if this is relevant, but it's quite funny. I said to them one day, you're not the Cray twins' grandchildren, or the, you're not, you have a really beloved family and grandfather and father and uncle and so on. And I don't think it's easy growing up with a name. And I think the best thing for me to do was always to be, I think I was the calm person. I was always mediating at home as a child. There was a dispute, I was always there. I trained later as a mediator because I found it was the greatest training I've ever done, the skill set, because you really learn to listen. And I think maybe I grew up in my own bubble, and I think I was left alone a lot to be my own responsibility. We're all responsible for ourselves, but had a very powerful father. I fell in love with men because of my father. He's the greatest formula I ever had, and he was a very gentle soul, very like my father-in-law. And so when people change their path, we can't affect another person ever. We can't change their mindset unless it's through tyranny or torture. We can't do anything else to change their mind. So if there's a path set that they want to pursue, then that is their decision. And that is something we have to be gracious about and let go of. And I think I think I'd observed a lot of things in my childhood with my parents and their divorce. And I had this gorgeous, glorious father who was unfaithful to my mother. And so, I don't know, maybe I was sort of perhaps complicit. Maybe I thought all men were unfaithful. It's the opening line of my book. I remember saying, I think there isn't a faithful man in the world. And this great male friend of mine put his fist on the table and he said, I should bloody well hope there is. Of course there are. Don't be ridiculous, Christel. And I did. I thought, oh, okay, because I'd been around the heartache and the upset and my mother hanging on to her status as the wronged woman. And she wasn't easy to live with. Marriage isn't easy, is it? It's a roller coaster for every single marriage, trying to always dovetail one's interests and how one spends one's time and being answerable to somebody else. And I actually think that because I grew up with lots of hobbies, being a Swede, there's lots of dark months, dark winters. The kids, they do things. They have hobbies. They don't sit around because it's just this, you have to develop things to do. And so, and the fact that Chris had his male sort of bastion of cricket and liked his rugby and played golf and everything meant that we could carry on our lives, and we were in a union, but we were set free because we were a little bit older. We married a little bit. We married at 31. But my book came about because I was writing. I write nonfiction because I'm interested in people. I'm interested in the fact that we're all the same. We hurt the same. We weep mostly at the same things. We have this extraordinary thing that we're all unique, and we are unique. But we have so much more in common, and that's why cultural mediation is attractive to me. I love cross-cultural mediation. I was bullied and I was a Caucasian Swede. I didn't come from another part of the world. I had Japanese friends. They did things completely differently at dinner. They ate with chopsticks. I wasn't sufficiently different to have been justified for all the bullying I got. I thought I could mold into the background. So I have a great compassion for the fact that if you stick your head above the parapet and you say, here I am, world, I am going to try this. I'm going to try and live my life with intention. People will always, those that want to run with a crowd will always see that, or sometimes, often, the closest people to us feel that we're maybe taking the limelight from them. Or maybe we should just shut up and follow the way that everybody's always done it for years, So I'm conscious that there's a lot of disempowerment of children in schools and also in families, and also as adults in the workforce. And I think my education came from training with Bob Proctor, training with Dr. Joe Dispenza, training with Sandy Gallagher, training with Anthony Robbins. I just loved it. I loved the freedom that they said, you can be what you want to be, you can do it. Sorry, talking too much.
No, absolutely fascinating. There's so much that we can take from that. There's just so many truths. Just going back to your childhood, growing up, this loving father, this person that meant the world to you, that just was your world. And yet, there was this relationship with, his wife, your mother, which he felt that he needed to go out the marriage to.
Well, he was 21 when he married.
Yeah.
And then he got to 30, and I promise you, he was so drop dead gorgeous that if I had dinner with him, my friends would say, oh, who's that man? I said, it's my daddy.
Yeah.
Because he was a beautiful man, and he was young, and a lot of my friends had older parents. And also he would say to me, why'd you trip up and say to me, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, when you can go A to Z? He said, because you're trying to always find somebody to find a mitigating circumstance for anything you achieve. So what you're saying is, this wasn't easy, honestly, I'm trying really hard, share the burden with me. Look at the obstacles I'm going through, which I don't think I did consciously, but I think I was afraid of succeeding. I was afraid of success. That's what, not failure. Failure meant that I was going to be accepted and everyone would say, oh, don't worry, darling, you can always do that again. If I succeeded, I was isolated.
And why were you afraid of success? Is that
because
isolation?
I was isolated when I succeeded.
Yeah.
I was stopping my sister and brother. They weren't achieving the same things. And they were different people. They were different people with different likes and loves and interests. And so when we got to the point of having to make a decision about my marriage, I thought, we have to release this. It mustn't be a trauma. We have a responsibility. I said it in the book, this is 4 people and 3 dogs, and the status quo was shifted for our sons. And because we're tremendous friends, we're really good friends. We know each other very well. We rubbed along very nicely for years, and we worked together and we did everything together. It was very difficult for the boys to really get over the fact that, and they were 17, 18 going to university, and people would say, God, they're old enough. No, they're not. The heart is the same, whether you're 95, 15, if it's broken, if it's sad, the sorrow exists in the person who holds the heart, whose heart it is. And you cannot start telling them that they should think this or they should behave like this. The fact is, they were brokenhearted. And there's a very good reason for them both being certified life coaches.
Yeah.
Because
and that's the life experience that they went through.
Yeah.
Talk to us about, soon after that time, and then obviously going into writing, did you feel that you were restricted? I mean, this is something you don't have to talk to us about, but in the marriage, did you feel that you were limited in terms of how you could express yourself, or was it just that was at that time in your life?
Well, I sang. I sing jazz, so I went from classical to jazz. I think I remember my former husband saying, all I wanted to do is sing, write, and paint, and she'd be the happiest person in the world. So no, I don't think I felt restricted by anyone. I think I was so grateful for our sons because they were IVF first attempt. And I had preeclampsia, so I could have died, and Fabian had an pneumothorax. He blew a hole in his lung. But essentially, they were extraordinarily well and fit and happy. And I just felt so much gratitude for them. I couldn't believe I was infertile. And I had them at 36, So I was humbling experience. And I know that all my job as parent is to make them happy and feel safe. End of. Get out the way of everything else. Let them do what they want to do and become who they want to become and follow their star, But my then husband said to me, I hold you back. And I don't think he did consciously. But I think I am a creative and I've always written. I started writing music when I was about 7. Went on the radio singing about a horse called Kelly. Wasn't allowed to ride a horse because I was doing ballet, and you had a flexed foot. So being, a disruptor, I went and started tap dancing, and then I was allowed to ride horses. But no, I feel now I have a freedom that I think is amazing, because I don't need to be a mummy. They've got me on Fine Friends, right? How are you? Where are you? Out of 10, are you happy, having a good time? Yeah, okay, bye, Ma.
And talk to us about that liberty and the freedom to express yourself and be creative and design your life, your week, your day as you please.
So we had a family home, of course, so that was left behind, and a new life began. And I realized that the things I loved came with me, and that the property I would find, I know it sounds silly, but I believe whatever's meant for you never misses you, and whatever is meant to miss you will dissipate quite quickly. So I started writing down what I wanted, how I wanted my life to look. I prayed a lot. I have quite a strong faith. I got all sorts of support on the nights. I never suffered anxiety. I don't think I'm one of I'm a Swede, Once we were beaten into submission, we became really nice, and the Vikings were put back in their box, and then we became sort of resolution seekers. And I think I just wanted my health. I wanted to have a sane mind. I didn't want to become bitter. I'd watched my mother become bitter. I asked her before she died, I said, can you forgive my father? And she said, ridiculous. I said, well, I think it worked. She said, does it work? And I said, yeah, I've tried it. I've done it. It does. So she said, oh, well. And I said, well, you'd sleep better tonight and you'd feel better tomorrow morning. And she rang me in the morning and she said, I've forgiven him. And I said, wow, that's one hell of a woman you are, And she said, yeah, I have. I've been silly. I realized. And I think she came to the latter part of her years and thought, what did I do that for? There's no hiding place, is there? You screw up, it's never going to leave you until you accept it and say sorry to it, or let it go, or forgive it. And you have to forgive. That's the only way to be. Otherwise, disease is an onset that comes from heartache and the subconscious mind. The mindset is so important. We're in control of every bit of energy. If you think that if I sent you a message in the middle of the night saying, do you know what, Amos, what is that mad person, Madra? It says mad when I look at it behind you. I could think of something, right? You'd wake up, you'd get the message. If I sent something across oceans about something, the energy, when people say pray, there were a lot of people that lost family in COVID. And they say, well, what's praying going to do? The fact is that worldwide, there are people praying all the time. So what you do when you pray is you just are connecting energetically to everybody else on that wavelength. Wow, that's powerful.
You're talking about a law of vibration here, it sounds like.
Well, there are laws. They're the laws of the universe. It's very interesting now about the hertz that we should be listening to, which is good for neuroscience, which is 432 hertz, which was Nikola Tesla, greatest engineer, keeps check. And Elon Musk takes his name for his cars. He was an amazing man. But Goebbels, I think, changed the tone that Bach and Beethoven and Chopin and all these people wrote in, which was 432 hertz to 400. And that just meant it was a slight change into the minor key. But it's depressing for the brain. It's depressive. And they know that now. So I think, to get back to your original question, I've always been creative, and I've always encouraged the boys to be creative. I was born on the water. We all had a rowing boat because a lot of water in Sweden, 99,000 lakes, right? And you swim at 4, and if you don't, they keep you in the water till you can swim, because it's dangerous, because you sink to the bottom otherwise, because it's so cold. And So my boys weren't on Game Boys, which is what they had at the time, and PlayStation. They were learning to sail or canoe and then I just said, what do you want to do? What do you like most? And they'd say, we really like dinghy sailing. We really like singing. We really like, and then they just chose. And I think I came from a family which was creative, and Chris is very creative, brilliant speaker, brilliant writer. And we come from an entrepreneurial mindset. And so I've just said, I believe whatever you want to do, if you're passionate about it, you can succeed. So it was my responsibility to get into my own life. It was hard. It's not easy. Change after a quarter of a century.
Absolutely. And again, the book, is a lot about the change that you went through. What would you want the audience to get from that? From reading the book?
So I do quite a lot of coaching, restorative, healing coaching, or sort of anything really I'm asked. But I think the first thing we need to do is have a little bit of self-love. We're no good as empaths unless we look after ourselves. We're just depleted then. So we need to take a little time out and I know it sounds silly, love ourselves. It's very kind of woo, isn't it? But I think calm reaction or calm response rather than reaction is a key factor. It has virtually healed me to take time out and not to, get hysterical or upset, but just to take stock and to really hear what the other person's saying. The other thing is I would do in a marriage, I would never put my children second. And I get very frustrated when parents, I understand that we can all get egocentric in marriage, and particularly when we're upset and we are on our high horse and we want to be heard. But we have to go second to the family. We cannot forget that we're scripting our children. Everything we say and do, they say and do. Everything we do, not say, they don't do anything we say.
Yeah,
they only do what we do.
Totally makes sense. Christel, you are very whole. And from what I'm hearing you say, you have to make those sacrifices, the sacrifices to put your children first. But then, of course, your happiness is paramount to being able to help them. So you have to be whole. You have to be in tune with who you are as a person, what you want to achieve in life. And I think that's a difficult crossroads that many of us face, because it's either pay the bills, live the life that is going to be mundane, it's not going to be the life that we've dreamed of, or you risk it all. But then the thing is, we've only got one life.
I don't think it has to be that dramatic. I mean, I would just pick up on your word sacrifice. To me, my children were the greatest gift in the world. I didn't sacrifice. I was I've said, I was the most booked babysitter. That's how I earned my pennies when I was younger. To find out I was infertile was like a goblet just into smithereens. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I couldn't get my head around. And so to succeed at IVF, 2 at once on the first attempt, I mean, is miraculous. It genuinely is miraculous. And we're talking about 1993. It was still a process of, and the man who helped me, who whisked them up in a saucer, I always say, Hassan Abdallah, he was the first man to really focus my mindset. He said, you're the vessel for life. I'm the microsurgeon. You listen to me, young lady. You put all your issues in a box, tie a lovely bow around them, put them on a shelf, and then leave them there, please. Because what we're doing is we're talking gift of life. We're not talking your fears. We're not talking your responsibility to give a grandchild to your parents and parents-in-law. We're talking about your life and the chance. And I will give you a baby. I don't know when, you guys, but I need you on side. And that's what I need you to do. And are you going to give me your hand over the responsibility and let me do this? And it was an amazing, he's an Egyptian and he's also a hypnotist. I mean, he has a global spiritual understanding. You know, he's an amazing man. And I thought, okay. And then I sent 80 women to him and he said, oh, holy cow, not another one. And he'd say, well, I'm going to send you to my my assistant. And I said, when he says that, you stand up and you go, I'm only with the captain. And he'd go, okay, Christel, I'll deal with this lady. So, and there was only one person who didn't succeed because they'd look at my babies and they'd think, wow, they're real. You know, this really works. And so I didn't see it as a sacrifice. And they bring so much joy. I mean, they are hilarious. They check on me at night. They say, night, you know, morning, how you doing? And that's because we've all come through this turmoil. We've all come through this walking, like I say in the book, it's like walking through a sandstorm, you know, without water, not able to open your eyes, you know, and beating away at it, carrying on, you know, and I think they had to do that too in their ways, you know, so, and so did Chris. And I think everyone was at sea, you know, and then when you're the mother, often I think when there's a crisis and you're not the victim, but you're the one who has to sort it out. So I would say I'm the frame around their picture, and they know that there's no judgment. I will never judge them. I know they can do it, whatever they want to do. I have huge respect for them, and they are so excited about my book. They're putting it all over TikTok. They're putting it all over the social media, and they're going to speak at the launch. Each one. I've got a third boy whose mummy died when she was too young, and so I've had him as well. And he's like a brother to the boys, and he's also written a foreword in the book. Extraordinary young man, and which is my privilege. So I think they've been a source of strength, you know. I mean, I'm doing couch to 5K at the moment. Oh God, it's not easy. You run?
No, I don't.
No.
I should do.
No, it's not great, but you know, and but I don't think if you're a creative, you can ever really put a cork in it and stop it. And I'm very inquisitive. I want to learn about people, you know. And I was telling you earlier that I went and did screenwriting, and the reason was that I'd never written for screen. I'd never written where I had to tell it so clearly that it could be a picture, you know, in somebody's mind's eye. And I also know that when I do a talk, I want people to think, oh, I hadn't thought of that. I want to go into a talk and a seminar like that. When I went to train with Bob twice in Canada, I was like this, listening, you know, taking notes and watching him. Remarkable human being. And I have friends from those days. We all know each other, and you have to get your tribe. You have to be in your tribe of people who understand. I would say as advice, you asked me advice, I would say that there is not a person in this world in a crisis who needs advice. There really is. They don't need advice. They just want you to be there within hugging distance, whistling distance, coffee distance, another heartbeat. They don't need, because if you say to me, I've got a problem, what do you think? I'll say, well, I think this. I now wouldn't, as a mediator, I now wouldn't. I want to hear you to tell me more, because my mindset comes from my experience, not yours. So my perception is self-centered and egotistical. So when people said to me, you're not listening to me, you know, are you a doormat? Why aren't you reacting? You know, I thought, no, I'm not a doormat. I'm just going to be dignified and calm and stay sane, try and sleep, you know, take care of myself. And then I'll let it all sink in, you know, and make sound judgment. But I would say asking advice is reaching out is really important in a crisis. When you feel alone, never be alone. Never be alone. But offering advice when people are in a crisis, or you know, they don't want to hear it. You know, they don't need it. They know already what's wrong. You know.
Absolutely. I think there's something that you said which is so profound, and it was again in relation to your boys. They are the picture, you are the frame, and the frame gives us focus. It gives us something to focus on, and it gives us the focus of this wonderful, wonderful gift that you've blessed the world with, which is your sons and the amazing work that they're doing. Talk to us about that. Talk to us about your, what you want to do in the future in terms of legacy as well.
Oh, so I'd like to buy them a really big house like we had in the country, so they could have the children on the top. Fabian could have his woman there, Julius, and then me with my lovely whoever, and then so that they had a refuge place to go and have a lovely time back out in the country, because it is lovely to be out there with, I'd love to do that if I could do that. But my book has been the culmination. It's a bit like, in the spring, you have, I was very vulnerable writing my book. It took me a long time. I thought I would hurt people I'd promised my heart to, I forever, despite change. And I was really a little nervous about releasing it. And everyone said to me, no, you're writing in love. It's fine. It's fine. And I thought, well, it won't, people want clickbait. They want juicy bits. That's not me. That would go against the integrity of my book. For me, it's about healing. I think that when the spring comes, we see it now. I stepped on a crocus yesterday on my walk. Oh, no. But the reason I say that is that when we're vulnerable, as I was then, as we all have been, and will always be in certain times, it's like that little green shoot of a tree or a plant. It's at its most vulnerable, but it's growing. It's going shoom. And then all of a sudden you have daffodils, or you have crocuses, or you have a tree. The foundation of that growing is always vulnerable. That's where you can knock it for 6 or stamp on it. That's why the years 1 to 7, when we're in the beta level years of the hypnosis, Aristotle, give me a boy till he's 7, I'll show you the man. Those years, the child is in hypnosis. The child is completely at your beck and call in terms of how you treat that child. We need to be on their side. We need to be supporting them. But this particular book has grown shoots. So because of IVF, I've been asked to talk about IVF, doing a talk on divorce in March. I've got a question and answer in Waterstones, which they're filming, which is about restoration of one's own character. And so I've realized that this is maybe my raison d'etre. This is maybe what I've always done and what I want to do more of. So the book has been a bit of a cathartic thing. Have you read it?
I haven't, and I need to, because the book is out. It comes out at the time of recording this. It's out today.
Yeah.
So it's available for us we can get it from Amazon.
Amazon, Foils, Waterstones, Barnes and Noble. And then I did the audiobook because I do professional voiceovers, and I did the audiobook, and then Julius said to me, I think you shouldn't be reading our forwards. I think we should read our forwards. So Julius, Fabian and Ben have all read their forwards in the book, which is quite cool. And that will follow now with the Kindle and ebook.
I'll need my copy quickly.
I mean, I just, if one person, you have to make yourself vulnerable, and it's not to disparage my former husband. He's a lovely, lovely man. And he has all the same sensibilities and exquisite qualities of my father and my father-in-law. I mean, that's the greatest formulae we have, is our parents. And the apple's right under the tree, right? So I know him very well. And if his path he needed it to change, that was a decision why should he not be allowed to make that decision? Why should I stand in the way? Why should I not try and understand that with some level of grace for my own well-being, to survive? You're not surviving if you're turning to drink and being hateful and retaliating and living in a misery and never letting it go, and having your status, as my mother did, as the the wronged wife. She was afraid. She thought that if she let that go, she would be meaningless. Her life would be meaningless because she'd only ever had the love of one man. That was her love of her life. So I get that. I get how it happens, but we need to be less egocentric and think about all the impact of our actions.
Wow, what wonderful, graceful words of wisdom. And
I don't know.
just for honestly, this is so good. There's such grace to you. I think you're such a wonderful person, and there's so much depth to who you are. I think even just this time we spent is, in my opinion, not enough. I think we need to do this again.
I'd love to.
Yes. I think definitely there's just something special and unique about you. And
Thank you so much.
I think, just for us in this book, we get that beautiful reflection of who you are as a person. We get to see your beautiful soul, and it opens our minds up and our spirits up so that we can also reach out for those things that we've endeavored to do. And I think there's so much good that we can take from it. Your journey, your experiences, your pain, your hurts, it all culminates in this wonderful book. If you want some amazing inspiration, check out the videos next to me, and I'll see you right there.